The stagecoach's wheel struck a rut in the road with such force that Olivia Edwards lost her balance, her wedding trunk tumbling from the roof rack just as the coach lurched to a halt at Timber Creek's dusty Main Street. It was 1875 in the Montana Territory, and she had traveled over 1,000 miles to marry a man she'd never met, only to arrive at her destination with one shoe missing and her heart hammering with uncertainty. Last stop, Timber Creek. The driver announced, helping the other passengers down before turning to Olivia. "This is where you get off, miss." Olivia peered out the window, scanning the small frontier town for any sign of her betrothed. Samuel Turner had promised to meet her, but the street was populated only by a handful of townspeople going about their business, none appearing to be waiting for a mail-order bride. "Are you certain this is Timber Creek?" she asked, clutching the letter from Samuel that had brought her west from Boston. "Yes, madam, been driving this route for 8 years. The driver hopped down and began unloading the luggage. With a deep breath, Olivia gathered her skirts and stepped down from the coach, wincing as her stockinged foot touched the rough dirt. The missing shoe had fallen off somewhere along the journey, likely when they'd forded a river crossing hours earlier. "Excuse me," she called to the driver. "Is there perhaps a hotel where I might wait?" The driver pointed toward a 2-story building. "Turner's Hotel is just yonder. Samuel Turner owns it. Reckon that's who you're looking for?" Olivia nodded, her stomach twisting with nerves. She'd answered Samuel's advertisement seeking a bride 3 months ago, exchanging a handful of letters before agreeing to journey west. He described himself as a successful businessman, but had mentioned nothing about owning a hotel. As she took a hobbling step forward, her trunk came crashing down from the coach roof, bursting open upon impact. Her carefully packed belongings, dresses, books, and personal mementos scattered across the street. "Oh." Tears sprang to her eyes as she dropped to her knees, frantically gathering her possessions before they could be carried away by the dust-laden breeze. "Need some help there, miss?" a deep voice asked. Olivia looked up to see a tall man in worn denim and a dusty brown hat observing her predicament. Unlike most men she'd encountered in town so far, he wasn't leering or laughing at her misfortune. Instead, his blue eyes held genuine concern. "I would be most grateful," she replied, trying to maintain her dignity despite her dishevelment. The stranger crouched beside her, helping gather the scattered items. "Name's Wade Dixon," he said, carefully folding a lace-trimmed nightgown before handing it back. "You must be Samuel Turner's bride." Olivia blushed, taking the garment and quickly tucking it away. "Yes, I'm Olivia Edwards." "Have you seen Mr. Turner today? He was supposed to meet the coach." Wade's expression darkened slightly. "I reckon you haven't heard then. Samuel left town about 3 weeks ago, rode out with a group headed for the gold fields in the Black Hills, left his cousin managing the hotel." Olivia's heart sank like a stone. "Left, but he knew I was coming. We had an agreement." Wade studied her face for a moment, then glanced down at her feet. "And it appears you've lost a shoe along the way." "Yes, Olivia felt the last of her composure slipping away. She'd spent nearly every penny she had on this journey, and now she stood shoeless and abandoned in a strange town. To her surprise, Wade didn't mock her. Instead, his eyes crinkled at the corners as he said, "Well, Miss Edwards, seems like you've had quite a journey. May I?" he gestured toward her. Confused, Olivia nodded. Without warning, Wade scooped her up into his arms, her modest traveling dress billowing around them. "Mr. Dixon, what are you doing?" she gasped, instinctively grabbing onto his shoulders. Wade laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "I'll carry you the rest of the way. Can't have you hobbling through town like a wounded bird. First impressions matter in a place like this." "But my trunk, my things," she protested. "I'll send the hotel porter for them. Right now, let's get you somewhere you can sit down and figure out your next steps." His strong arms held her securely as he began walking toward the hotel. Olivia should have been scandalized. Being carried through town by a stranger would have caused an uproar in Boston, but exhaustion and disappointment overwhelmed her sense of propriety. Besides, there was something reassuring about Wade's straightforward manner. "Are you a friend of Samuel's?" she asked, trying to distract herself from the impropriety of their position and the strange, fluttering sensation in her chest when Wade glanced down at her. "Not exactly," Wade replied, his jaw tightening. "We've had business dealings. I run the livery stable at the edge of town." As they approached the hotel, curious onlookers gathered, watching the spectacle of a dusty cowboy carrying a half-shoeless woman down the main street. "That's Samuel Turner's mail-order bride," someone whispered loudly enough for Olivia to hear. "Poor thing doesn't know he's gone," another voice added. Heat flooded Olivia's cheeks. "Please put me down," she whispered urgently. "Everyone is staring." "Let them stare," Wade replied, but gently set her on her feet at the hotel steps. "Wait here. I'll speak to Milton, Samuel's cousin." Olivia stood awkwardly, one foot still stockinged as Wade disappeared into the hotel. Minutes later, he emerged with a thin, balding man who regarded her with obvious suspicion. "Miss Edwards, I'm Milton Turner. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. My cousin did mention a correspondence with a lady back east, but he left no instructions regarding your arrival." "But I have his letters," Olivia protested, reaching into her reticule for the neatly tied bundle of correspondence. "He invited me to come, sent money for my passage." Milton adjusted his spectacles, scanning the letters quickly. "These appear genuine, but I'm afraid Samuel's impulsive nature often leads to complications. He's not expected back for months, if at all. Gold fever has a way of changing a man's plans." Olivia felt the world spinning around her. "What am I to do? I have nowhere to go, barely any money left. The hotel has no vacancies," Milton said flatly. "The mining company has booked all available rooms for their surveyors." Wade, who had been listening silently, stepped forward. "My sister Wilma lives just outside town. She's been looking for help with her boarding house, cooking, cleaning, that sort of thing. It's respectable work, and you'd have a place to stay until you decide what to do next." Olivia looked at him, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, she nodded slowly. "I would be most grateful for the introduction, Mr. Dixon." "I'll arrange for your trunk to be delivered," Wade said. "But first, let's find you another shoe." 30 minutes later, with a borrowed pair of boots from the general store, charged to Wade's account despite her protests, Olivia found herself in Wade's wagon heading toward his sister's boarding house on the outskirts of Timber Creek. "I cannot thank you enough for your kindness," Olivia said, stealing glances at the cowboy's profile as he handled the reins. "Most men would have simply laughed at my predicament." Wade's mouth quirked upward. "I did laugh, if you recall." "Yes, but not unkindly." Olivia adjusted her bonnet against the afternoon sun. "You've saved me from complete disaster, Mr. Dixon." "Wade," he corrected. "And I haven't saved you from anything yet. Wilma's boarding house isn't exactly the life you probably imagined when you agreed to marry Samuel Turner." "No," Olivia admitted, "but it's better than being stranded with no prospects at all." She hesitated, then asked, "What kind of man abandons his bride to be for a gold rush?" Wade was silent for a long moment. "The kind who's always looking for the next opportunity instead of appreciating what's right in front of him." He glanced at her. "If you don't mind my saying, Miss Edwards, Samuel Turner's a fool." The boarding house turned out to be a large, two-story structure with a wraparound porch, situated on several acres of land with a small orchard visible behind it. As they pulled up, a woman in her 30s emerged, wiping her hands on her apron. "Wade. Wasn't expecting you today." She stopped short upon seeing Olivia. "And who might this be?" Wade helped Olivia down from the wagon before making introductions. "Wilma, this is Miss Olivia Edwards." She arrived on today's coach expecting to marry Samuel Turner, only to find he's run off to the Black Hills. Wilma's expression softened. "Oh, you poor dear, that Samuel never did have the sense God gave a jackrabbit." She extended her hand to Olivia. "Welcome to Dixon House. We've got plenty of room, and as it happens, I'm desperately in need of help." Inside, over strong coffee and fresh baked bread, Wilma explained the situation. Her husband had passed away the previous winter, leaving her with the boarding house and more work than she could manage alone. Currently, 5 boarders occupied rooms, 2 schoolteachers, a clerk from the mining company office, and 2 elderly sisters who had moved west to be near their nephew. "It's honest work," Wilma assured her. "The pay isn't much, but you'll have your own room and meals. And Timber Creek's growing, there might be other opportunities once you get settled." Olivia found herself warming to the straightforward woman. "I'm a fair cook and quite good with numbers. In Boston, I helped my father with his accounting business before he passed." "Accounting?" Wade perked up. "The livery's books are a mess. I've been meaning to hire someone to straighten them out." "I would be happy to assist," Olivia offered. "As repayment for your kindness today." The arrangement was quickly settled. Olivia would help Wilma with the boarding house and spend several hours each week organizing Wade's business accounts. In return, she would have room, board, and a small stipend enough to save toward whatever future she decided to pursue. That evening, after helping serve dinner to the boarders, Olivia sat alone on the back porch, watching fireflies rise from the tall grass beyond the garden. The day's events seemed almost dreamlike in their improbability. Just that morning, she had been anticipating meeting her future husband. Now she was essentially a servant in a frontier boarding house. The door creaked open behind her and Wade stepped out, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might want this," he said, offering her one. "First day in a new place is always the hardest." "Thank you." Olivia accepted the cup, noticing he'd added cream and sugar. "How did you know how I take my coffee?" Wade settled into the chair beside her. "Noticed at lunch. I pay attention to details, useful habit out here." They sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, listening to the chorus of night insects and distant coyote calls. "I should be devastated," Olivia finally said. "By all rights, I should be crying myself to sleep over Samuel's abandonment. But you're not," she considered this. "No. Strangely, I feel almost relieved. Is that terrible of me?" Wade shook his head. "Means you've got good instincts. Samuel Turner isn't the marrying kind, at least not the staying married kind. He's been engaged twice before, to my knowledge." Olivia's eyebrows shot up. "He never mentioned that in his letters?" "I expect there's a lot he didn't mention." Wade took a sip of his coffee. "Why did you agree to marry him, if you don't mind my asking?" The question was forward, but Olivia found she didn't mind. "My father died last year, leaving considerable debts. Our house was sold to cover them, and I was left with few options. My aunt offered to take me in, but she made it clear I would be expected to serve as companion and nurse to her in her declining years. And that prospect was worse than marrying a stranger in Montana territory." Olivia smiled ruefully. At least the stranger promised adventure and a chance at a life of my own. Aunt Hortense promised only servitude until her death, followed by a small inheritance that would likely come too late for me to build any life worth having. Wade nodded thoughtfully. "So you chose the risk over the certainty?" "Yes, and now I find myself in an entirely different situation than I anticipated, yet oddly not unhappy about it." She glanced at him. "Is that strange?" "Not strange, brave." Wade's eyes met hers. "Most people cling to the predictable, even when it's miserable. Takes courage to embrace the unknown." Something warm unfurled in Olivia's chest at his words. For the first time since arriving in Timber Creek, she felt a flicker of hope that perhaps this unexpected turn of events might lead somewhere worthwhile after all. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm. Olivia rose early to help Wilma prepare breakfast for the boarders, then spent her mornings cleaning rooms and doing laundry. 3 afternoons a week, she walked to Wade's livery stable to work on his accounting books, which were indeed in terrible disarray. The livery was a bustling operation. Wade not only stabled and cared for horses, but also ran a small freight business, transporting goods between Timber Creek and the nearest railroad station 40 miles away. He employed 3 young men to help with the horses and wagons, all of whom regarded Olivia with curiosity when she first arrived to work in the small office attached to the stable. "Never seen a lady accountant before," one of them, Billy, remarked on her first day. "Then you're in for an education," Wade replied before Olivia could respond. "Miss Edwards knows more about balancing books than the three of you know about horses, so mind your manners." The office was small, but had a window that caught the afternoon light, illuminating ledgers that hadn't been properly updated in months. Olivia found the work satisfying, untangling the web of transactions, creating new systems for tracking expenses and income, discovering that Wade's business was actually more profitable than he realized once everything was properly accounted for. "You've been undercharging the mining company for freight," she told him one afternoon, pointing to her calculations. "They should be paying at least 15% more based on volume and distance." Wade leaned over her shoulder to examine the figures, close enough that she could smell leather and pine soap. "You're sure? Positive. You're essentially subsidizing their operation at your own expense," he straightened, rubbing his jaw thoughtfully. "Might be why Garrett from the company office keeps buying me drinks at the saloon, trying to keep me from noticing." "Very likely," Olivia agreed, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach when he smiled down at her. It wasn't proper to harbor such feelings for a man she barely knew, especially when she was technically still promised to Samuel Turner, absent though he might be. Yet with each passing day, Olivia found herself looking forward to her time at the livery more and more, and not simply because of the satisfying work. Wade Dixon was unlike any man she'd known in Boston. Straightforward but never crude, confident without arrogance, and possessed of a quiet strength that manifested not in domineering behavior but in reliability. When he said he would do something, it was done. When he gave his word, it was kept. "You're staring," Wade observed one afternoon as he worked at his desk while she updated the ledgers. Olivia blushed furiously. "I was merely thinking. About how different everything is here compared to Boston." Wade set down his pen. "Better or worse, different," she repeated. "In Boston, everything is about appearances and social standing. Here, it seems to be about what a person can do, their usefulness." "And which do you prefer?" Olivia considered the question seriously. "I think I prefer being valued for my abilities rather than my family name or how well I pour tea at a social gathering." Wade nodded. "That's why the West suits some people better than others. Fresh start, chance to be judged on your own merits." He paused. "Though I imagine there are things you miss." "Libraries," Olivia said immediately. "Concert halls, bookshops, sidewalks without mud," Wade laughed. "Fair complaints, though Timber Creek does have a small library part of the school building. And Mrs. Fredericks, one of Wilma's boarders, has a piano in her room. She teaches music to the local children." "Really?" Olivia brightened. "I used to play quite well. I miss it." "I'm sure she'd let you practice sometimes if you asked." Wade's gaze lingered on her face. "You know, when you smile like that, it's like watching the sun come out from behind clouds." The compliment, delivered so matter-of-factly, caught Olivia off guard. "Mr. Dixon, Wade," he corrected, as he always did. "Wade," she amended. "I'm still technically engaged to Samuel Turner." His expression sobered. "You're right, that was improper of me." He returned to his paperwork, a slight furrow between his brows. Olivia wanted to tell him she hadn't minded that, in fact, his words had caused a pleasant warmth to spread through her chest, but propriety held her tongue. Instead, she returned to the ledgers, though her concentration was broken. That evening at dinner, Wilma announced news that sent a ripple of excitement through the boarding house. The town's holding a harvest dance next Saturday at the new community hall. First proper social event since they finished building it last month. The elderly sisters clapped with delight, while the mining company clerk immediately asked Mrs. Fredericks, the piano teacher, if she would accompany him. The other school teacher, Miss Holloway, sighed wistfully. "I don't suppose I'll attend. No one to escort me, and it wouldn't be proper to go alone." "Nonsense," Wilma declared. We'll all go together, safety in numbers. Olivia, you'll come too, won't you? All eyes turned to her. Olivia hesitated. I'm not sure it would be appropriate given my situation with Mr. Turner. Fiddle faddle, said Mrs. Carruthers, the elder of the two sisters. That man left you high and dry. No one would fault you for attending a community dance. Besides, added Wilma with a knowing smile, I happen to know my brother plans to attend and he's an excellent dancer. Olivia felt her cheeks warm. I couldn't possibly. You could and you should, Wilma interrupted firmly. You've been working hard since you arrived. A night of music and dancing will do you good. Later, as Olivia helped clear the table, Wilma cornered her in the kitchen. You like him, don't you, my brother? Startled by the directness of the question, Olivia nearly dropped the plates she was carrying. I respect him greatly. He's been very kind to me, Wilma snorted. That wasn't what I asked and you know it. Her expression softened. Look, I've known Wade all my life. He's a good man, the best I know, and I haven't seen him look at a woman the way he looks at you since. Well, ever. But Samuel Turner is a scoundrel who abandoned you without a second thought. You owe him nothing. Wilma took the plates from Olivia's hands and set them in the wash basin. At least come to the dance. See what happens. Life's too short to waste on men who don't deserve you. The night of the dance arrived with a crispness in the air that hinted at the approaching autumn. Olivia stood before the small mirror in her room, assessing her appearance with critical eyes. She wore her best dress, a deep blue silk with modest lace trim that she'd originally brought for her wedding day. It seemed ironic to wear it now, but it was the only suitable garment she owned for such an occasion. Wilma had helped her arrange her hair, pinning the chestnut waves into an elegant updo with a few soft curls framing her face. You look beautiful, her friend assured her. Wade won't know what hit him. Wilma, please, Olivia protested. I'm not trying to, that is, I don't expect. Oh, hush, Wilma laughed. Just enjoy yourself tonight, that's all anyone expects. The community hall was transformed for the occasion with paper lanterns, autumn foliage decorations, and a small stage where Mrs. Fredericks and two local musicians provided lively music. Nearly everyone in Timber Creek seemed to have turned out, from ranchers in their Sunday best to miners still bearing traces of dust despite their efforts to clean up. Olivia entered with Wilma and the other boarding house residents, immediately feeling the curious stares of the townspeople. Most knew her story by now, the abandoned bride who had found work at Dixon House instead of a husband. Don't mind them, Wilma whispered. Small towns run on gossip. They'll find something new to talk about soon enough. Across the room, Olivia spotted Wade in conversation with several men. He wore a clean white shirt, dark vest, and trousers more formal than she'd ever seen him, and had clearly made an effort to tame his usually unruly sandy hair. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, his conversation forgotten as their eyes met. Olivia felt rooted to the spot as Wade excused himself and made his way toward her, weaving through the crowd with purpose. When he reached her, he removed his hat and offered a slight bow. Miss Edwards, you look. He paused, searching for words like a vision. Thank you, she replied softly. You clean up rather nicely yourself, Mr. Dixon. His mouth quirked at her use of the formal address. I was hoping I might claim a dance if you're not otherwise engaged. I would like that very much. The musicians struck up a waltz and Wade led her onto the dance floor. His hand at her waist was warm and steady, his steps confident as they moved in perfect rhythm. For someone who spent his days with horses and freight wagons, he danced with surprising grace. Where did you learn to waltz? Olivia asked, genuinely curious. My mother insisted all her children learn proper dancing, said it was the mark of a gentleman no matter what work he did. His eyes held a hint of mischief. Surprised, continually, she admitted. You defy expectations at every turn. They completed several circuits of the floor before Wade spoke again. There's something I need to tell you. Something in his tone made Olivia's heart quicken. Yes, I received word today. Samuel Turner was killed in a claim dispute in the Black Hills 2 weeks ago. Olivia missed a step, but Wade's firm grip kept her upright. Killed, are they certain? The territorial marshal confirmed it. I'm sorry to bring such news tonight of all nights, but I thought you should know. Olivia absorbed this information, searching her feelings. There was shock, certainly, and sadness at a life cut short, but not grief, not the devastation a woman should feel upon learning of her betrothed's death. I barely knew him, she said finally. It seems wrong to pretend a depth of feeling I don't possess. Wade nodded, understanding in his eyes. Still, it changes your situation. You're no longer bound by any promise to him. The music ended, and couples around them applauded the musicians. Wade led Olivia toward the refreshment table, his hand lightly at the small of her back. Would you care for some punch? He asked, reaching for a cup. Yes, thank you. Olivia accepted the drink, using the moment to gather her thoughts. Wade, about Samuel's death, you don't need to say anything. I understand it's complicated. No, that's just it. Olivia set down her cup, summoning her courage. It's not complicated. I feel sad that his life ended so violently, but I don't feel like a widow. I never truly felt like his bride-to-be either. Our arrangement was more business than romance. Wade studied her face. And now I find myself in a place I never expected to be, doing work I never imagined doing, and… She hesitated, then pressed on, developing feelings I never anticipated having. Wade's expression remained carefully neutral. Feelings. For a certain livery owner who carried me through town when I arrived with only one shoe. Olivia's heart pounded so loudly she was certain he must hear it. Who has shown me nothing but kindness and respect since the moment we met. For a long moment, Wade said nothing, and Olivia feared she had grievously misread the situation. Then his hand found hers, fingers intertwining with gentle pressure. Olivia, he said, her name sounding like a prayer on his lips. I've been falling in love with you since the moment I saw you gathering your scattered belongings in the street. I just never thought I had the right to say so. And now I'm asking if you'll allow me to court you properly. No rushed arrangements, no mail-order agreements, just a man and a woman getting to know each other with honest intentions. Relief and joy bubbled up inside her like a spring. I would like that very much. The musicians began another waltz, and Wade led her back to the dance floor, this time holding her just a fraction closer than propriety strictly allowed. As they moved together in perfect synchrony, Olivia felt the last pieces of her old life and expectations fall away, replaced by something new and infinitely more precious, a future shaped by choice rather than necessity. The months that followed were filled with changes for Timber Creek and for Olivia. The town continued to grow as the mining operations expanded, bringing new businesses and residents. Wilma's boarding house remained full, with a waiting list of potential lodgers, and Olivia's organizational skills proved so valuable that she was soon managing most of the business affairs while Wilma focused on cooking and hospitality. Wade's livery and freight business thrived under Olivia's careful accounting, expanding to include a regular mail run and passenger service to the railroad station. Their courtship progressed with a natural ease that surprised them both: picnics by the creek when weather permitted, Sunday rides in Wade's buggy, quiet evenings on the boarding house porch talking until Wilma pointedly trimmed the lanterns. By the time winter arrived in earnest, blanketing the mountains with snow and turning Timber Creek streets into frozen, rutted paths, Wade and Olivia had become inseparable. The town's residents no longer whispered about poor Miss Edwards, abandoned by Samuel Turner, but instead nodded approvingly at that nice couple, Wade Dixon and his lady. On Christmas Eve, after the boarding house celebration had wound down and the other residents had retired, Wade asked Olivia to bundle up for a short walk. The night was clear and cold, stars blazing above them like diamonds on black velvet, their breath forming clouds in the frosty air. "Where are we going?" Olivia asked, her gloved hand tucked securely in the crook of his arm. "You'll see." Wade led her through the silent town toward the livery stable. Inside, lanterns had been lit, casting a golden glow over the central area that had been cleared of its usual equipment. "Wade, what is this?" He guided her to the center of the space where a small table had been set with 2 chairs, a bottle of wine, and a single wrapped package. "I wanted somewhere private for this moment, and this place seemed fitting. This is where we truly began to know each other, where I watched you transform chaos into order with those clever hands and brilliant mind." Wade pulled out her chair. "Where I fell more deeply in love with you each day." Olivia sat, her heart fluttering. "It does have a certain charm, though I suspect the horses might disagree," Wade laughed, taking the seat opposite her. "I've bribed them with extra oats. They've promised discretion." He pushed the wrapped package toward her. "Open it." Olivia carefully untied the ribbon and removed the paper to reveal a small wooden box with intricate carvings of wild roses around its edges. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a delicate gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. "It was my grandmother's," Wade said quietly. "My grandfather gave it to her when they homesteaded here, before there even was a Timber Creek. He promised it would anchor her through whatever storms came their way." Tears blurred Olivia's vision as Wade knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "Olivia Edwards, when you arrived in Timber Creek with only 1 shoe, I had no idea my life was about to change forever. I thought I was simply helping a stranded traveler, but instead, I found the other half of my soul." His voice grew husky with emotion. "Will you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," Olivia whispered, joy swelling in her chest. "Yes, with all my heart." Wade slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to his feet, pulling her up and into his arms. Their kiss was tender at first, then deepened with the promise of a future together, a future neither had imagined 6 months earlier when fate and a missing shoe brought them together. Their wedding took place on the first day of spring, when wildflowers dotted the hillsides and the creek ran high with melted snow. The entire town turned out for the celebration, held in the same community hall where they had danced together for the first time. Wilma stood as Olivia's witness, beaming with pride and satisfaction at having played matchmaker. As Wade and Olivia spoke their vows, she wore a new pair of satin shoes dyed to match her wedding dress, but tucked away in her trunk was the single shoe she'd been wearing when she arrived in Timber Creek, preserved as a reminder of how sometimes losing your way can lead you exactly where you're meant to be. 5 years later, Wade and Olivia Dixon stood on the porch of their home, a comfortable 2-story house built on land adjacent to the expanded livery stables. The business had grown to include a carriage manufacturing shop and tax store, managed jointly by the couple whose complementary skills had created one of the most successful enterprises in the now booming town. Their 3-year-old son William played in the yard with his puppy, his laughter carrying on the summer breeze, while Olivia cradled their infant daughter Elizabeth in her arms. "Sometimes I can hardly believe this is my life," Olivia said, leaning against her husband's solid strength. "If that stagecoach wheel hadn't hit that rut, if my trunk hadn't fallen, if I hadn't lost my shoe, if I hadn't been in town that day to receive a shipment," Wade added, his arm tightening around her waist. "So many coincidences leading us to each other." Wade pressed a kiss to her temple. "I don't believe it was coincidence. I believe it was destiny just wearing an unusual disguise." Olivia smiled, watching their son chase butterflies in the garden she had planted. "A destiny that began with a missing shoe and a laughing cowboy who offered to carry me the rest of the way." "And I have," Wade murmured against her hair, "and I always will."